It's Tuesday, October 2nd. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. It is a hell of a day to talk ball, and joining me to do just that is Andy Behrens. Andy, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on? Well, number one, the fantasy baseball season is finally over, so that is a weight that has been lifted. The buys are hitting. Dudes are coming off IR. Like there's a lot going on. This is a pretty fun week. Pretty spicy week.
There is a lot going on. The fantasy baseball thing doesn't affect my life in one way. So that's great.
It was costing me a lot of sleep. It was costing me a lot of sleep, a lot of my focus. So I feel like I can make much better fantasy football decisions now than I was even 24 hours ago.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm glad to hear that, at least. If it makes your life easier and Scott's and Dalton's, then it's worth it. And there's a trickle-down effect here to the podcast. But hey, for all of you out there that play fantasy baseball, shout out to you. That's wonderful. Again, just not my thing. I've got enough fantasy and I've got enough sports in my life that I can't possibly imagine doing fantasy baseball. When I first started at Yahoo, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get into other fantasy sports, just in case for a career move wise. I think I drafted a fantasy NBA team and didn't know what the hell I was doing. And within 2 weeks, it's like, yeah, this isn't for me. I quit. So.
I wouldn't wish this baseball addiction thing on anyone unless they already have it, because it's so much work. It's like, it's not just every day. It's like multiple times a day. It's hard.
Yeah. That's why, hey, I'm telling you, that's why the NFL is so popular and fantasy football is so popular, because it's not that it's not difficult, but it is very like regimented and you can just kind of work your life around it, where the other sports are like, it seems much more work. So
baseball is like, oh, next. I wonder who blew a save on the West Coast. I probably should stay up and see. And like, it's just, there's so much of that for so long. Football, obviously, you can check in like 3 times a week and you can win a league and you can have a really good team and you're still an attentive manager.
Well, the one thing the NFL is great at is just like dropping news on us. And we do have one piece of news to get into before we jump into the people's panic meter coming out of week 4. And it's that Colts head coach Shane Steichen let us know today that running back Johnathan Taylor is set to return from the PUP. He's going to practice on Wednesday. Steichen said super excited to be back. I don't know if that meant that he is excited to be back with Johnathan Taylor, or Johnathan Taylor is now excited to be back with the Colts, even though that seems like that was probably not the truth, because apparently he still wants to be traded. Steichen also did not rule out that Johnathan Taylor plays this week. This is complicated because, again, like I said, we don't know how Johnathan Taylor feels about the Colts. We don't know if he's had another mysterious tour bus conversation with Jim Irsay that certainly did not go well. But again, let's just say all things being equal here, Johnathan Taylor is back with the Colts. He's going to, let's say he plays in week 5. How are we feeling about that?
Yeah, as of Monday, Irsay had been relatively quiet, at least as far as I know, which is encouraging. The early word on, at least on NFL Network, was that Taylor was healthy. These are good things. I've already, like, I dove into ranks really early and I put him kind of in the mid-teens. I guess I could come up a little higher on that. He's Johnathan Taylor and he might be perfectly healthy. We'll see what the practice reports look like, but I'm ready for it. I'm excited for it. It seems like there should be a lot of trade talk, but none reported, like sort of as of Monday afternoon. So I feel like half the league should be interested in Johnathan Taylor. There's a lot of teams that have, like, obviously he would be an upgrade for more than half the league. There are plenty of teams that have significant injuries at running back. So I kind of hope I don't know. I hope he's happy. I hope he's happy wherever he ends up. But I wouldn't mind if Zach Moss stayed a thing. That would be helpful to me personally. But anyway, for now, I've got Taylor in the teens. I've got Moss sort of buried in the 30s, and we'll see how this shakes out.
I'm looking at Jim Irsay's Twitter feed right now, which is always a fun place to go. As of our taping this show, it looks like his last 2 posts have been saying it's so wonderful about, Ryan Kelly, Colts center. Looks like his sons were born. So shout out to him, twins. That's great. Love to see that. Also, it's a congratulations to Scott Bless of Bloomington North High School. So congratulations to Scott and Bloomington High School, but nothing nefarious about Johnathan Taylor that might send this thing into a tailspin. So again, have no idea really how this situation is going to play out. But Andy, I do have one like fantasy just smash spot for Johnathan Taylor to play. Do you want to know where it is?
Yeah.
The Indianapolis Colts. Like, I think that's the best place for him at this point.
So boring. Oh my gosh.
I get it that it's boring, but think about some of I'm sorry. I got you excited there just to bring you like right back down to earth. I get that it's kind of boring, but man, I think things without Johnathan Taylor even playing, and, again, knock on wood, hopefully he's healthy, all that stuff. Without him even playing, I think his situation from a fantasy perspective has improved. Because, look, he is not going to Anthony Richardson is remaining a bit of a, rushing threat, and he's going to continue to be a rushing threat. He's going to be a rushing threat around the goal line. There's going to be a lack of touchdowns. But I think, to steal a Scott Pianowski term, the buoyancy of this offense around Anthony Richardson has been much, much better than expected coming into the year. Zach Moss has been smashing with this like every down workhorse role. He didn't have the biggest week in the world last week, but whatever. I think Johnathan Taylor in Indianapolis and an offense that I continue to see great things from this offense. I'm overall happy with it. I think this would be a good spot for him to be a fantasy like high end running back 2, maybe in this economy, like a running back 1.
Yeah, I think everybody should be excited about what they've done with that offense around Richardson. It's really, again, I see everything through the sort of lens of being a Bear fan, and I'm jealous, right? Like, they've created a situation in which Richardson is perfectly comfortable. They've given him some easy throws. They've obviously leaned into his strengths. It's great. And you're right, like Zach Moss, especially a couple weeks ago, he was fantastic. So as much as I kind of hate to see the Zach Moss thing go away because I have a few shares of it, that's obviously the wrong way to look at this situation. You're right. Like, Taylor would be better off on the team that currently employs him, where he's sort of been in the building for however long. So it is definitely the best case scenario for him. And some of my other, far off dreams for Johnathan Taylor are probably not going to be teams that are actually active in the trade market anyway, except perhaps as sellers.
I think that's the problem with Miami, especially. They've got their own like burgeoning guy there.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah, like that ship has sailed. So I think realistically, the best spot for for Taylor is to play with Anthony Richardson. And look, I think the Colts, if Johnathan Taylor comes in here and has like a big season for them and becomes like an engine point of this new offense, like I think all things equal, he'll get a new deal at the end of the year and he'll get what he wants. But I don't want to like psychoanalyze the situation anymore than has already been done here. So with that, let's get into the week 4 People's Panic Meter segment. This show is all about you, the people. So every week we reach out to you to see what has you panicked heading into a Monday morning about your fantasy team after all the action on Sundays. The best responses get discussed on this show. Obviously, there's a couple ways to submit. You could submit to the mailbag, shoot a written, email, voice, video, whatever, memo at any point during the Sunday games to fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. You can also just reply to the thread that I put out on Twitter, which I maybe forgot to do it on Sunday night and had to do it Monday morning this week. That's not important, Andy. The point is, we got a ton of great responses this week. Before we get into those, I just want to get one thing off my chest here real quick, and you could tell me if this is wrong. Like, I am not going to sit here, just like I don't really, at this point now, we know what the Bears are. I'm not going to have Andy give a State of the Union of the Bears every week. I am not going to be giving a State of the Union on guys like Jahan Dotson or Sky Moore every single week on these shows, okay? Like, this is the receiver position. It's volatile. If these guys are, I know you might want it for like your dynasty teams and all that. Like, wow, man, is it just not going to work out for Jahan Dotson or whatever? We can have that conversation over the course of the year, but like the check-in on guys who are drafted outside the top 30 receivers on a weekly basis and have really not been like, and just aren't every week starts and really like never were going to be every week starts. I think we're not going to do that every single week.
Yeah, we had the conversation a handful of weeks ago that I think we should just continue to cite, which is like unless a receiver legitimately was somebody that you were forecasting for like 140 targets, they have no path to being just an every week smash guy. They're like, that's not what they are. Like a guy who's in line for 90 to 100 targets is gonna have some really quiet weeks. And you can fret about the quality of the offense overall. You can fret about matchups, all kinds of things, but rest assured, these guys are not going to be scoring you 16 fantasy points week in and week out.
Honestly, it makes me a little irritated with, I mean, look, if you're a listener and you think I do this, like, and you want to give me feedback on it, please, like, let me know. I'm open to it, but it irritates me with the rest of the industry and like the way that we've gotten into this, like, look, and people do this. They make their choices about their own careers, but like, this one sleeper that's going to help you smash your league. And then it's like Jahan Dotson, Jahan Dotson or Sky Moore. Like, no, we should paint a realistic range of outcomes for these guys. And like, here's the deal. If Jahan Dotson has like 4 quiet weeks to start the year and then 4 great weeks to end of the season, and we look back and he's like, oh yeah, he had like 900 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns. Like, pretty good year for Jahan Dotson. That's how the receiver position works, right? Like, I've made my complaints about Jerry Jeudy from last year. Jerry Jeudy's going to come in this episode, by the way. He had 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. People are like, great year. Well, it was a journey to get to that, but that's how the receiver position works.
Yeah, it makes me think of the fact that, like, I don't know when this was. At some point, we started using league winner for like everybody we just kind of liked.
Yeah,
like there are not 100 league winners at any given season. There's like 3 or 4 guys who at the end of the year we could legitimately characterize as, wow, I made the playoffs and I won my league because of that guy. Like, but it's a really small number. It's not guys who go like 908. Like that's not the person who won your league unless they did all of that in week 17.
Yeah, I feel like we should ban the phrase league winner.
Yeah, we really should.
Puka Nacua, people are gonna be like, this guy's a league winner. Well, maybe he's your September winner. I mean, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what if he has? By the way, he's a wide receiver in the NFL, and I love Puka Nacua, but he could have like 3 bad weeks in a row. Very possible. Just they could be random. They could be the next 3 weeks. They could be weeks 8, 9, 10. They could be weeks 14, 15, and 16. And then let me tell you what, you ain't winning your league, right? Because that was just the random timing that thing occurred. Like, this stuff is all so, I didn't mean to get into a real big tangent about this, but this stuff is like, it happens all the time with this position.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost guarantee that at some point, probably, Cooper Kupp is going to come back, and then within 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to be having the panic meter discussion on Puka Nacua.
Oh my God.
Puka Nacua.
You're so right. You are so right. That is 1,000% going to happen. And we're going to sit here. Don't panic. It's just a couple weeks. Like, he's out there running routes. He still looks great in an offense that looks really good. Yeah, that's exactly how that's going to happen. So, hey, just when that, Colin, put a pin in this conversation we just had about Puka Nacua, so Andy and I can like take 15 minutes out of the podcast in week 7, 8, and 9, and we could just run that out there. I mean, he'll probably just keep doing 160 yards every single game. The dude's so awesome, but whatever. Anyways, let's move into the people's actual submissions here, starting with Daniel S. Daniel had this audio to play. Let's take a listen.
Hey, what's up, man, Andy? This is Dan. I'm currently panicked over the Dolphins. In my home league, I just completed a trade acquiring Tua and Mostert in exchange for Pacheco and Kyron Williams. And after this flame out by the Dolphins, I'm considering pulling a Podrick from Banshees of Inisherin and completely ending my friendship with my league mate. So I just want to know if you think the Dolphins will right the course of their ship, or if that trade was just truly a disaster. Thanks.
All right, Andy. I mean, Andy's laughing. Come on, man.
They scored 70 like 8 days ago. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not terribly panicked about the Dolphins. They currently lead the NFL in scoring. Yeah, bummer. They only gave us 20 points, and they were involved in a really fun game last week against a tough team. But like, no, I am for sure not panicked about of all teams, like where we're just gonna like throw the whole team into the conversation and say, oh boy, things are taking a bad turn. Yes, they did. Their point total was reduced by 50 from one week to the next. But man, this is a really fun offense, and it's going to continue to be a really fun offense, and it's probably the fastest team in NFL history. I mean, let's just see where Mike McDaniel takes it.
Okay, if I can, yes, overall, no, we are not panicked about the Miami Dolphins in any sense. And will they right the ship? I definitely think they will right the ship. I do want to be empathetic to Daniel here, because I know if I was Daniel and I just traded Kyron Williams and Isaiah Pacheco away for Tua and Mostert right before week 4, like you said, I would be a little frustrated that, well, there goes Kyron Williams having another big day. Isaiah Pacheco has a huge night on Sunday Night Football. Tua has a whatever game, right? It wasn't anything. It wasn't like egregious. It wasn't the reason that they lost that game by any means, right? Tua was fine. He gets sub 15 fantasy points, but he was fine. The Mostert thing, I do want to just there were a few people that sent in Mostert stuff. So with the way that Achane looked and, the way that he is continuing to mix in here, I do think it's worth asking the question, Andy, if you were expecting Raheem Mostert to just be like a set forget guy the rest of the way, he obviously has the performance that he had, really low total, 7 carries, 9 yards, 3 catches on 5 targets, which that's not too bad, but that's probably not going to happen very often. Is it worth being a little concerned that the Raheem Mostert gravy train may have already returned to the station?
Yeah, I suppose I suppose it is, because he's going to have plenty of games. I mean, shoot, he's Raheem Mostert. I realize that this is somebody who actually acquired him via trade, but most of you drafted Raheem Mostert, if you drafted him at all, super late, like one of your final picks before you hit the defense and kicker rounds. So you've already turned a profit on Mostert. I think it's going to go like this with Achane as well. I don't know if by the end of the season we look back and we say, oh, those guys were my rocks. They absolutely produced for me week in and week out. I think they're going to mix in not only both of those backs, but at some point Jeff Wilson comes back and he probably gets involved in this offense to some extent. So now we're talking about 3 guys who are splitting, I don't know, maybe it's 28 touches a game, and it's going to be hard to be really consistent that way. The thing that'll bail you out, though, is the fact that I think for the season, Miami is still going to end up averaging 30, 31, 30, 33 points a game, something like that. I think this is going to continue to be a really productive offense. It's schemed up really well. The talent is outrageous. Everybody's healthy right now. So yeah, I can see the concern there, but I actually think that as we look, and you and I are coming off this, we just did a 4 weeks into the season mock draft, and we're coming off that exercise, and I'm sure that'll come up at various points in the show. But for me, I was determined at the start of that draft to not go heavy at running back. And you can look at the damage that has already been inflicted on the running back position, I guess one of 2 ways. One of those ways is, oh my God, I got to get Christian McCaffrey, or I got to get one of the guys who's still healthy. Or you could say, the bust rate and injury rate at this position has already kind of wrecked it. And maybe I shouldn't be leaning on running back so hard. So I don't hate that you traded a couple of running backs that, one of whom you grabbed off waivers and the other was kind of a dead zone guy. You traded those 2 guys for the leading MVP candidate right now, and Raheem Mostert, a guy who's tied to a great offense. So overall, I don't hate this trade. I feel actually pretty good about it, and I feel great about Miami long term.
Yeah, I feel great about Miami long term. I do just want to say, for Daniel specifically, I am going to let you feel bad about the fact that you traded right before week 4. You traded the guy who ended up being the running back 3 overall, the running back 7 overall. This is pre Monday Night Football, so if Kenneth Walker has 5 touchdowns, leave me alone. You know what I mean. Running back, the guy who's running back 3 overall, the guy who's running back 7 overall, for a guy who had 3 fantasy points, and his teammate running back wise was the 4th highest scoring. I'm going to let you feel bad about it, but I think the total in sum here is that no, Andy and I are not panicked about this.
I will also say I'm super I continue to be surprised and super interested in the specific usage, where they're using Achane on the field. The fact that guy is getting so many looks inside the 10-yard line, so many opportunities it is absolutely not how I expected him to be used. And I think it's fascinating, and it would be worrisome if you had Mostert on a roster.
Yeah, I do think that there was you can't put the genie back in the bottle moment with Achane in week 3, and that's going to continue to be a thing. There's going to be weeks, just because that's how it works, unless he's touching the ball, and he did outsnap Mostert in week 4, unless he's touching the ball, 15 to 18 times every single week, there's going to be volatility in his scoring, even if he's used in perfect ways in a great offense. God, his contact balance. I mean, Austin raved about it after week 3, but it's just so striking for a guy who's his size. So anyways, I think overall, we're not panicked about Tua. We're definitely not panicked about Tua, and we're not panicked about Mostert, but there's some level of adjusting expectations, I think, that needs to go on here. All right, next message comes in from Joey M. Let's hear what he had to say.
Matt, what the hell happened with Chris Olave? Carr only had 127 yards, and 33 of those were to Kamara on 13 completions. Am I right to be panicked on Olave moving forward?
Yeah, Andy, the Alvin Kamara stat line is one of the most pathetic I've seen in quite some time. Alvin Kamara himself said after that game, we need to have some, we're going to have some tough conversations about what's been going on offense for not just this last week, but what's been going on the last 2 years, basically. I think the answer to what happened with Chris Olave is, he played with a quarterback who shouldn't have been playing. And I'm a little, we'll talk about the Bengals later. These like coaches that are not like kind of pulling these guys aside and being like, hey, it's just don't be going out there. Okay. It's on my radar.
Yeah. Derek Carr probably shouldn't have played, right? Joe Burrow probably shouldn't have played if that's what we were going to get. It was kind of a theme for the week. And yet at the same time, like Deshaun Watson took some heat for not playing. So I don't you can't, there's no right choice for these guys to make necessarily, but rough scene for Derek Carr overall. Like with Olave, I think first of all, like the first 3 weeks of the season, he saw double-digit targets. He's having a good year. Pretty easy to write this off. Obviously, the plan cannot be to feed Alvin Kamara like 13 catches every game. I guess you're excited about that if you have Kamara in a PPR league, but there were no yards there. It is not the highest and best use of him or Olave or anybody. You have to be concerned a little bit about the health of Derek Carr moving forward if they're really not willing to play Jameis. But overall, you're getting a good season from Olave. Like this is really a sort of Derek Carr concern to me and not an Olave concern.
Yeah, I mean, 10, 11 targets to start the year, and he went over 100 yards in 2 of those games, 86 yards in the other. I mean, he's been great this year. I think he should probably continue to be great, Chris Olave. It's just about the health of his quarterback. I'm hoping that I know this seems like hindsighty, but even like on Sunday morning, I'm like, what are they doing? Like throwing Derek Carr out there when you have a capable backup. It just makes no sense to me. But I mean, that's what happened to Chris Olave is he played with the quarterback who probably shouldn't have played. It stinks when your second round pick, probably maybe your number 1 receiver for your fantasy team goes out there and has 1 catch for 4 yards. But we talked about at the top, even the best of the best can have random one-off games, especially when the conditions are like that. So I think we just got to continue to monitor Derek Carr. This offense, even if it's not going to be firing on all cylinders the rest of the year, we've already seen that Chris Olave can produce solid numbers in that environment. He will not score 0 touchdowns for the entire year. That is for sure.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mentioned the mock draft that we recently competed. He still went in that mock basically where he went preseason. He was middle of round 2.
Yeah, and I think that is correct. I think he can finish the season extremely strong, have a great rest of the season. Okay, next one in here comes in from Mark M. Mark writes us, Elijah Moore, that's it. That's the message. In a 10-team non-PPR league, should I hold on to him as a weekly flex or start fishing? The targets have been there, and I'm not going to count this week's quarterback play as a factor, but where should the Elijah MF and Moore line be drawn? Thank you very kindly, Mr. Harmon, sir. Signed, Mark M, a Reception Perception subscriber. So, Mark M. Listen, Elijah Moore sort of fits in the bucket that we talked about at the top with Jahan Dotson and Sky Moore. Mark, you're saying that you're not going to count this week's quarterback play as a factor. I think we got to. I think that if that's why you're writing in the message, right? Look, Elijah Moore made an absolutely boneheaded play, running backwards and losing 20 yards on a freaking rush attempt. That was just like claw your eyes out, stupid. But otherwise, yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's a huge L this week, Andy, for the day 3 rookie looks good in preseason. Maybe he will be good. I mean, because Aiden O'Connell was a nightmare. I think I saw a stat that Aiden O'Connell, 58% of his pressures turned into sacks. Khalil Mack was like on washed watch. And then he had 6 sacks against Aiden O'Connell. I mean, unbelievable. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson, there was like, and look, I get it because nobody likes Deshaun Watson, and I'm totally sympathetic to that. But there was like legitimately people in big media that were like, maybe we see Dorian Thompson-Robinson sometimes here. It's like, okay, well, congratulations. You saw it. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. I feel like if you actually discounted this past week's game, you would still be feeling pretty good about Elijah Moore because his previous 2 games were, 9 targets, right? Like the volume is absolutely there. He's getting work out of the backfield, which is fun, but man, maybe that should come to an end after the after the rush attempt that might be the worst carry I've ever seen that didn't end in a like scoop and score or something, right? Like that was really bad. That was like creatively bad, but whatever. Like you can throw this one out because of the quarterback situation. I will say though, like if you're in a 10-team league and Elijah Moore, who is probably not somebody that you're leaning on, is on a bye. If what you're really asking is, can you drop him in a 10-team league? I think you can, because I don't think anybody's going to be, I don't think anybody's going to be like scooping him up immediately into his bye week. I don't think he's that kind of player for fantasy purposes. So I think you're probably clear to do it, and you can probably get him back in a week and a half.
Yeah, the only thing, right, he's on a bye this week. They get the 49ers the week coming out of the bye. You're probably not going to play Elijah Moore there. I think you could probably act, in a 10-team league. Look, I believe in Elijah Moore long-term, and I actually think his role has been pretty good on this Browns offense. They got to get him going more downfield. They got to get the quarterback going a little bit more here. But it is a shame that, Watson did take some heat for not playing, but I mean, what are we sitting here talking about all these quarterbacks that did play, and it was a disaster. Yeah. So, long-term, I believe in Elijah Moore. I think that this Browns offense is like against the Titans the week before, they started to successfully transition from the Nick Chubb under center play action version of the offense to like a lot of empty, a lot of shotgun. That's going to be the way it looks the rest of the season. And I think there are some spots here where Elijah Moore is going to have big games. But yeah, in Andy's specific advice here, I kind of co-sign that too, even liking Elijah Moore, 10-team, non-PPR. He has the bye. He's got the 49ers. You're not going to play him there. But then week 7 against the Colts, we've seen with the Colts a lot of wide receivers. Don't be surprised if you're trying to pick them up before that week.
Yeah, I fully agree with that.
Next one up here, Tyler G says, what am I to make of Rhamondre Stevenson? Does he look good on film and it's just the Patriots offense holding him back? Any hope for him to meet expectations rest of season? Great work. Enjoy the content quite a bit. Well, Tyler, we enjoy you quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, here's the deal, Andy. I know we've talked about Stevenson before, that we could see the split with Zeke, kind of coming. But it's still, even that, all things considered, it's been a really, really disappointing run out for Stevenson.
Yeah, this is tricky for me. I understand why you're asking, but I feel like there were a couple of different sets of expectations out there for Stevenson. Like he's closer to meeting my expectations for him this year than he is to, the people who were like bullishly drafting him, late second round, something like that. I think especially once Zeke was signed, and even when they were indicating that they were going to sign somebody, I kind of thought that was out the window. Like the idea of Rhamondre Stevenson as something close to a full workload guy was just not where they wanted to go. I don't think it's where Stevenson wanted to go. You and I have talked about that based on comments that he made late in the season last year. It's totally on fumes. And like, that's fine. He's actually still played 69% of the snaps. So he's out there a lot. Part of the problem is absolutely nothing went right in this past week's game. So like nobody's walking away from that performance like feeling good about about their own play or I mean, like no skill player did anything of note there. And it was like the bummer is that Mac Jones was terrible after opening the season. And I don't know, maybe this says more about Philly's defense, but I thought Mac Jones was like better than the numbers in the opener. I thought his receivers let him down a handful of times, and I thought Rhamondre, particularly as a receiver in that game, was great. Like he was making like yards after catch miracles happen. I thought he was fantastic, and we haven't seen a lot of that since then, and that's a worry because like the other thing is with Zeke, when Zeke comes in the game, they'll throw to him too. Like they'll basically get the same usage. So it's not like Zeke did anything against Dallas. Nobody did anything against Dallas. So I think you have to kind of throw that one out. It sounds like they're not veering away from Mac Jones. It's alarming that it was even a question, coming out of week 4. I feel like I don't see the upside for Stevenson that maybe the person asking the question saw to begin with. So I'm not really shocked by his performance year to date, but I understand the panic, and it is warranted.
Yeah, I think a little panic is warranted if you have those preseason expectations. I definitely think it's time to adjust. Again, brutal when you get the game you got, but
yeah,
I think I think it says more about Dallas's defense, and Colin and Scott, Colin noted it, and Scott and I talked about it on the podcast, that classic Dallas thing to do, to have a disappointing loss and then just not even just win the next week, but absolutely, destroy, throttle, dismantle an inferior opponent the week after that. That's pretty classic Dallas stuff. I think that defense played like a unit that was pissed off and then could smell blood in the water very early. That will probably not happen going forward. Next week they get the Saints. That's kind of, the Saints secondary is a little bit better than their run defense, but it's still kind of not it's not an ideal spot. They get the Raiders in week 6. So I think Stevenson's just going to be a bit of a volatile running back too. Cause like brass tacks, even though I think that performance by the Patriots offense is an outlier, this is still probably an average at best offense. And you're now a guy splitting touches legitimately on a average offense. Where did Stevenson go in that redraft? I don't even remember, but
he went. Oh, that was actually it's a great question, because he was one of the biggest drops. He went round 7. He went pick 67 overall. And again, this is coming off the offense just absolutely getting mauled, right, and producing nothing of note. So it's in the immediate aftermath of that game. And it's also kind of, we're just a week out from Zeke seeing like 16 carries. So there are definitely reasons for concern there. By the way, I think Stevenson's a great player. I think he's really good. I think he's one of the best options out of the backfield as a receiver in the NFL. He's just not apparently in a great offense right now.
All right, next one up here. Ethan C. He sent in a ton, like 5 different points, but I'm going to highlight point 1 and point 5. One for laughs and one because the Bengals, his number 1 point, were absolutely dominated the social submissions, and it makes a good transition into that. Number 1, obviously the Bengals are tough to start besides Chase until at least the bye in 2 weeks. Wouldn't call it a panic, just a very Andy Behrens resigned that Burrow can't play right now. Some of my favorite tweets that I got, one from at T.I. Jimenez 23. Sorry, I'm blowing that. Whatever. Joe Burrow couldn't do it against the Titans secondary. I'm officially worried. At Dickinson Pete said, why did T. Higgins' soul choose to relocate into Nico Collins' body? Also funny because Ethan in his email said, love the show and RP. I hope James Coe has finally come to understand your weird affinity for Nico Collins, aka a wealthy man's T. Higgins. Shout out to you, Ethan, and everyone else who gets that. You're a real one. But anyways, yes. Bengals, Andy, I'm officially and I know we came on here in week 1, probably week 2, and said no reason to panic about the Bengals. It will be fine eventually. We're at full on pee your pants panic, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Because that perspective was shaped by the assumption that Joe Burrow would improve with time. He's certainly not moving better. There were even the week before, in the Monday Nighter, there were plenty of reasons for concern, right? They're not stretching the field with Joe Burrow right now. There's a lot that he obviously can't do. And he got rocked a few times by the Titans too. So that was a pretty tough watch. I haven't gone back and gone through every snap of that game, but everything I saw was, Joe Burrow slowly picking himself up off the ground. Chase was fine, but obviously hasn't had a big game yet. Chase in our mock, by the way, went middle of round 2, which is a notable drop for somebody who was the 2nd or 3rd overall pick throughout draft season. So there's plenty of reasons to worry here. I mean, if the quarterback is really going to be broken for a protracted period of time, and he is obviously the engine of the offense, then there ain't no fixing it until he can move again, until he can plant again, until he can stretch the field again. Because that was a really ugly scene.
Week 7 is their bye, as Ethan alluded to here. Again, we just had this conversation with the Browns. That's kind of funny, but the week after the bye, they get the 49ers. I'm not going to feel great about the Bengals going into that matchup. In fact, I'm going to be God, I hope 1 week off was enough for Joe Burrow to feel better. And I don't know that it is going to feel that way. And again, I think this is a moment where Zach Taylor has to sit here and look in the mirror and think long term and just be like, I get it. I'm sure Burrow is beaten down the door to play. And like, you got to respect these guys' toughness and like the dedication to their teammates and wanting to be out there and all that. But I can't stop thinking about Ja'Marr Chase being like, I don't want to see him until week 5. And you know what? We're heading into week 5 and I don't love the Burrow I've seen. And I don't feel like I'm suddenly going to see a different Burrow here in week 5 that he continues to play through this. And look, here's why this is not surprising. If like the Bengals are a team that is inherently, it's Joe Burrow's team, right? Like this team is made in the image of Joe Burrow. If you take Joe Burrow and you pluck him off the team, this team's going to stink. And right now, who's ever back there, you know, wearing number 9 for the Cincinnati Bengals is not Joe Burrow. So the team stinks. And like, because they don't run the ball well, their offensive line is not very good. A lot of it is built on Joe Burrow improving and sort of like moving in the pocket and being a great pocket decision maker. And that's just not present with this calf injury. The vertical throws are not going to be present with the calf injury. And how many times have we talked about the Bengals offense over the years? They've gotten better about it, but like the infrastructure of the Bengals offense is still like, we have receivers that are better than your guys. And like when we want to throw, we want to just run all four verts or like 989 and just dunk on you. Like we can do that because we're the Bengals. We have a great quarterback and great receivers. And just like, that's not present right now. And look, if Josh Allen was going through the same thing, it's a little different because like Josh Allen is a physical freak and Patrick Mahomes is like a physical freak. So I'm not really sure what to compare it to because Burrow's just not quite that player from like a physical standpoint. He's more just the accuracy and all that type of stuff, which is going to be compromised when your lower body is compromised. It's just like, yeah, if these guys are not at 100% and they're out there, the offense is going to look bad. And this offense looks bad right now.
Yeah, I don't have an easy fix for it other than Joe Burrow getting healthy. And I like hindsight and whatnot, but it actually does seem like perhaps the best thing for that team would have been for him to simply sit a month. I don't know. Would they be 1-3 after a month without Joe Burrow? I don't know. I don't think it would be any worse than it is right now. Right. So that may have been the path. And I'm sure they were talking about it, but now I don't know, this looks like the same sort of week 1 version of Burrow. I don't know if this thing gets better like in a bye week. I think it's going to take more than that. And he's going to have to sit at some point.
Yeah, and Zach Taylor said this morning that he's not going to sit out. He's going to play week 5. T. Higgins has a shot to play week 5. I mean, look, if you have Higgins, like you're screwed. I don't know what to tell you other than just like, and I have T. Higgins on at least one team, and I'm just looking at him like, well, I'm probably going to play him every single week, and it's when he gives you rough performances, especially now that he's banged up. Like, yeah, this is what's going to happen. So I just think like the Bengals they're going to end up like fumbling the season away, basically. And it is a shame that I get why if you're these guys, this team, you can't fathom life without Joe Burrow. So you don't want to voluntarily give him up, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, it is.
To bring back the good vibes here, improve the mood here. Ethan also sent in, I heard you like kicking content, but luckily for you, after a rigorous 30 seconds of trying to find a joke or feign concern about Younghoe Koo, I could insert here, I gave up and prepared to hit send.
Hey man, you should be worried about Younghoe Koo. Like he's getting crushed by this Atlanta situation as much as anybody, as much as Kyle Pitts. Younghoe Koo is that's a top of the ranks kicker. We're not talking about some middling tight end here that we're messing with. Younghoe Koo came away with like a point last week. It's a problem.
On that note, let's get into the rest of the social media submissions here at Era V0057. Okay. They sent in Jaylen Waddle. My second round pick is killing me. Not sure why they're not featuring him. And it looks like we've got 5, angry face, the orange with the cursing blocked out mouth, I believe. He sent in 5 of those emojis here at the end of the post. I don't know, Andy. I think it's a little concerning. Look, what we said at the top, we're not worried about the Dolphins, all that. It is a little concerning that the usage gap has been so wide between Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, but rather sneakily, that is what it looked like also last year as well. Waddle was just running hot from an efficiency standpoint.
Yeah, it wasn't really extreme this past week. Like no receiver there had a supernova week or anything like that. Waddle's a really good player who's coming back to an offense that has discovered something in Achane, right? Like that's going to continue to be an issue. So there is now yet another like super exciting mouth to feed in that offense. So it's a little bit of a worry. I'd give it more time, and I definitely appreciate the concern when it's, he was probably your second round pick, your third round pick. He, by the way, went in round 3 of the mock that we just had. So at least one person wasn't concerned. I'm a little bit concerned. And this isn't, Jaylen Waddle isn't a huge fantasy problem of mine, but I would definitely be a little bit worried, right? Because any thought that Achane was merely a 1 week phenomenon that was related to Waddle's absence proved false, right? Like they continued to feed him quite a bit. So that's just one more like mouth to feed in that offense that can worry you. So I'd say some concern is definitely merited here.
Yeah. Jaylen Waddle went to Jorge Martin. Shout out Jorge, just joined Yahoo in a wider capacity. We love Jorge, but I'm with you that like I think he's probably more of late third round, that's fine. Early fourth round, I think that's the right range. I'm looking at some of the guys that went after him. And there's not very many that I'm like, yeah, they're slam dunk. Like I'd rather have them than Jaylen Waddle. But
like Nico Collins or Jaylen Waddle.
Yeah, I really wanted to say in the chat, like Andy's pick of Nico Collins in the fourth round, like somebody print that out, frame it, and mail it to me right here. I'd love to hang it up. But yeah, look, here's the deal. Like these guys that are the number 2 receiver on their teams, and they're gonna have bumpy rides because like this thing revolves around Tyreek Hill. Like expected fantasy points wise, according to Fantasy Points data, Tyreek Hill has 20.3 expected fantasy points per game, and Jaylen Waddle has 10.7. That's gonna, Tyreek is probably gonna come down a little bit, and Jaylen Waddle is probably gonna bump up a little bit, but the gap there is going to be wider than ADP suggested. So we are allowing some level of panic here. Notice I'm just dodging the Nico Collins question altogether, and that's on purpose. Next one up here at Jimmy 2x0 sends in Trevor Lawrence and the entire Jags offense. Huge disappointment, and the schedule going forward is brutal. Andy, I have said several times in my Discord, I think on the podcast last night, on Chris Harris's podcast this morning, my panic level on the Jaguars is like, it might not be completely 0, but it's kind of close to 0. Am I wrong in feeling this way?
No, this is exactly the way that I've talked about it, and I've been hit by some of the Lawrence people who are freaking out. Like again, and I know I said it like on last week's FFL. I've said it on a couple of different platforms. I think Lawrence looks awesome, and the people who do like game by game grading also think he looks awesome. He's made some incredible throws this year. Some of those throws have been dropped in earlier weeks, right? Like the receivers haven't been perfect. I think he's been much better than his receivers this year, but I think he's playing at an extremely high level. And he throws some balls that like other NFL quarterbacks just can't. You can't make that a regular part of the offense, right? Like
especially on the move.
Yeah, like deep outs that he throws, just like darts where you start to say uh-oh, and then the ball always reaches the receiver before a defensive back can pick it. That guy's got a cannon, and he knows it. And I feel like they're really, really close to having an eruption game. And I don't know, they're coming off a win. Like I get that he had kind of a quiet fantasy day, but he looks terrific to me. Like my relative panic, if I had like Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence, it's not even close. I'd be on drop watch with Joe Burrow, but I'm not anywhere close to that with Trevor Lawrence. I imagine this is probably because like CJ Stroud is out there and he keeps having great weeks, and like there are probably some, like you start looking at matchups in the waiver wire and you're like, I don't know, maybe I should cut this guy loose. I think he looks better than anybody that you're looking at on the waiver wire. I think he looks better than all but a handful of quarterbacks in the league right now. So I wouldn't move off of him.
He hasn't had a smash game in fantasy. I get that. They haven't really had a game where they put it all together offensively, not even close. But I think that all can still come. Like, I don't think Calvin Ridley has looked perfect this year, but I don't think he's looked terrible. He's made some mistakes, and there's been some moments where the rust is apparent. I think that's the thing we have to just understand here is that there's going to be a little bit of like an acclimation period. And I think like when we saw him, like all the good stuff from preseason and training camp, we were just like, oh, nope, it's all good with Calvin Ridley. They're still trying to figure him out. I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what they want him to be. But in the meantime, I think this is a credit to Trevor Lawrence. In a tough matchup where the Falcons, who know Calvin Ridley awful well, like had AJ Terrell track him around the field and play tight physical press man coverage and force low percentage throws, Trevor didn't force it, and he got Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk going, and eventually it was fine. So yeah, I think
they also let Lawrence run a little bit this last week. I mean, that's my far off dream is that they'll sort of unleash the rushing upside of Trevor Lawrence. It's not going to happen. They clearly don't want to put him at risk that way. But when needed, that guy can always pick up 20 yards on the ground. He's a really good runner.
Next one comes in from X Chain Banger X, and it says Pat Freiermuth, first chest injury, now a hammy injury, and now Pickett is hurt. I think it's a sunk cost and time to drop and stream tight ends. Yeah, basically all your Pittsburgh guys. Andy, I think we can keep this quick. You should panic.
Yeah, I fully agree with this. I think you can drop Freiermuth. I mean, like there was a path at some point for him to be, can he finish as a top 3 tight end, top 5 tight end? I could see it. I can't see it anymore. Andy's hurt. He's a drop right now.
Next one up here at Drew Met_FF. Jerry Jeudy isn't going to be what I hoped for. I mean, I'm going to recuse myself on the Jerry Jeudy discussion, but I would say probably not going to be what you hoped for.
Yeah, no, he's not going to be what you hope for. He's not going to be what a lot of people hope for. And like the Denver passing game is fine. Like Russell Wilson's been fine. He hasn't been a problem. It's just like Sutton is getting
Wilson's
fed.
Been sneaky. Pretty good.
I thought he was a pretty obvious start against the Bears defense, and he showed up late, but he showed up, right? Like he's found a way to put up decent fantasy totals more often than not this year. Like he's been absolutely fine. Sutton's been fine. Marvin Mims barely plays, but when he plays, it's 50 yards, 70 yards, 100 yards, right? Like eventually they're going to get Mims on the field a little bit more, and that sort of explosive playmaking potential will open up. I have never thought of Jerry Jeudy as one of the league's secret superstars, and I know that there are people who do. So I am sorry, but it is not playing out that way, and I don't think it's going to play out that way.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy will have bigger moments. I'm not saying like, it's over for Jerry Jeudy. But like we're sitting here saying the Denver Broncos passing offense looks fine. And Jeudy isn't even the one that does need to get verifiably needs to get more work in this passing offense, because that is Marvin Mims. That's the thing here. So speaking of category of not going to be what you expected, Nooker at Nooker sends in, he sent in Rhamondre Stevenson, but also Jahmyr Gibbs. And I mean, yeah, I think if you took Jahmyr Gibbs in the 3rd round, you should be panicked because, oh my God, Andy, I don't know. I probably shouldn't have saved this deep into the podcast because it was driving me nuts that as the Lions, and look, yeah, the Lions have not had a great history, but the Lions with Ben Johnson, who has been a great offensive coordinator, and uses players to perfection, basically, in that offense, they're smashing the Packers with David Montgomery, who doesn't suck, who isn't the yards per carry truthers get off my lawn. They're smashing the Packers. They're like, where is Jahmyr Gibbs? How could he be not be, come on, man. Like, they're not beholden to your fake teams, bro. And look, it'll happen. I took Jahmyr Gibbs, actually. I think in either the 7th or 8th round, I think, because I was on the turn. So whatever, end of 7th, early 8th. I took Jahmyr Gibbs at that point in our redraft because I think there will be brighter days ahead for Jahmyr Gibbs. He's just probably not going to repay a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, he's also he's clearly good, and they're getting some usage out of him. And it's not like that hasn't been, this was not. We'll shout out Chris Harris here again, because he and I were going back and forth on this. Like the number of people who are hammering away at the Lions draft, the Lions crushed their draft. Okay. They took a lot of heat on draft night, and people thought some of their positional choices were weird. Campbell's been freaking awesome. Laporta's been awesome. Branch has been awesome. Gibbs is a really good player. Like, was it a weird place to take a running back? Sure, it was a weird place to take a running back. They didn't miss on anything at the top of that draft. Like, you can question the positional choices, I guess, but they knocked that draft out of the park. And it's wild to still be hammering away at it. Like, it was a huge success story for them. Like, they won the first couple days of the draft. Good work all around. And again, I think he looks fine. The problem for Gibbs going forward, and we've discussed it before, he just doesn't have that one sort of money role that's his. He is not even close to the red zone or goal line running back. That's all Montgomery. He doesn't have passing downs all to himself. He doesn't have like hurry up all to himself. He's a high-end backup right now, and it looked really good when Montgomery was out, but when Montgomery's healthy, you're gonna have to rank Montgomery ahead of him. That's just the way it's gonna go for a while. And like, just because coaches occasionally say things like, "Oh yeah, we want to get him more involved," that's not like a binding legal commitment to get him involved. That's just coaches saying nice things about a player who's playing well. Things are rolling for the Lions right now, and David Montgomery's been good.
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs will have his time. And look, they're not going to load up David Montgomery with 30 plus carries every single week because he will get hurt. Okay. Like, that's not going to happen, but they're still trying to figure out Jahmyr Gibbs. And that just is what it is right now. But I think his time will come. I wouldn't even mind if you went out and traded for him at this point. Like, go out and, trade him on the low. Cause clearly he's dropped from a 3rd round value to, like I said, 7th or 8th, wherever I took him. So I wouldn't mind sticking him at the end of your bench if you have the depth. But all right, Andy, let's move into the waiver wire here. Give us the top 5 pickups for the week.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna. I'll start at number 5, and I'm gonna veer away from what I actually put in the show document because I like a guy that you talked up a little bit earlier. I'm gonna start with Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds has been so good. He had a couple of highlight catches against Green Bay. He's just been excellent, and he has long history with Jared Goff going back to the Rams days. I just don't think he goes away when Jameson Williams returns, right? Like, Jameson Williams is somebody that we're all kind of excited about because he was clearly a playmaker at the collegiate level. He's been a huge enigma so far in his pro career. He comes back early from suspension. He's not somebody who comes back to an immediate known role. I just can't envision any scenario where Josh Reynolds goes away because he's making plays. He's getting sort of high value, high yield targets in that offense. It's a really good offense. I think you're going to want Josh Reynolds stashed somewhere like to get yourself through these bye weeks because I think more often than not, he's going to see a half dozen targets a game and it's going to go well. So I think Reynolds is somebody who, like, nobody's going to fight you for him because everybody's going to be fighting each other for Jameson Williams, and that might not amount to anything. And Reynolds is really in a good situation there. My number 4, and this could very well just be chasing touchdowns, but it's kind of a weak period on the waiver wire, and I think we need to take a look at Michael Wilson. Had a couple of touchdowns in week 4. Great game for him. High buzz player during the summer. He may have already exceeded anything he ever did at the collegiate level at Stanford, but he's been really good. The highlights were fine. I guess my worry here is that I think when things are going right and they're going on schedule for Arizona, that's going to be a sort of James Conner centered offense. I don't think there's going to be room for multiple receivers to go off in any given week. But again, it's a bye week. I understand anybody chasing Michael Wilson. My number 3 is going to be Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd's seen 24 targets over the last 3 weeks. T. Higgins has a rib fracture, decent chance that he doesn't go this coming week, the week after perhaps. So that's a concern. We know that Boyd can produce when one of the big name receivers on Cincinnati's roster is down. It's obviously it's not a great version of the Bengals offense right now. And if you're like, I think I'm going to be out on that, I understand. I'm just saying he's going to see some volume coming his way. I feel like this is a week where there's 2 guys at the top that we can really be interested in, and one of them is Jaleel McLaughlin. Rookie, he's with Denver. He's coming off a layup game against the Chicago Bears, right? Like, somebody was going to go off against the Bears. Probably multiple players were going to go off against them. So he touches the ball 10 times, has a touchdown on a just really nifty piece of playmaking on a screen pass. And he did that while Javonte Williams was in the game. And then Javonte suffers a hip flexor injury. it has a chance to cost him some time. If McLaughlin steps into a larger role, he's going to be a really interesting player. I don't think he's going to be like a 25 touch a game guy, because obviously Samaje Perine's still there, all that. But he's a good player, and the NFL is not moving too fast for him. He is actually the all-time leading NCAA rusher, regardless of level. It's probably a record that's never going to get broken too, because like he had the COVID year and all that, right? So like he rushed for over 8,000 yards in his NCAA career, which is wild, right? Like it's a crazy thing to say. It's just nobody's going to break that. Youngstown State, his highlights are hilarious. And he's small, again, he's not gonna fall into 30 touches a game, but pretty talented player who has at least some short-term value. And then my number one has got to be CJ Stroud, who is playing the quarterback position about as well as anybody right now. He's coming off 3 straight multi-touchdown games. He is averaging, as a rookie, in his first month in the NFL, he's averaging 303 passing yards per week. He's putting the ball in the air a ton. Hasn't thrown a pick yet. Again, it's 2 touchdowns every week. He's turned Nico Collins and Tank Dell into fantasy stars, guys that we're starting each week. I think Stroud is playing really well. And again, the buys are kicking in. So like, no Justin Herbert this week. We've got some guys down. We're going to continue to have some guys down. I think you can play CJ Stroud comfortably moving forward.
Saw this quote about from Jamie Eisenberg of CBS Sports. Noted that Sean Payton, this is what he had to say about his running backs today. Let's talk about Jaleel. Played really well. He was explosive in the run and pass. He gave us some juice, so we'll continue to look at his role. Javonte, we won't mention or comment until the week progresses. There was a report last night, I think, from Adam Schefter, who was like, yeah, he's not going to miss much, if any time. We'll see, man. I mean, this is what happens with these running backs coming back from serious injuries. Sometimes you get clear of the injury, but then other things start to crop up here for Javonte. And yeah, I think Jaleel is just like a Sean Payton guy. He might be like a classic Sean Payton pet project type. And you notice that Samaje Perine is not mentioned in this little statement from Sean Payton. I do think I would rather have McLaughlin going forward regardless than Perine, because they've just like made an effort to get him involved in Achane adjacent ways, right? Like in the scoring area. It's very kind of similar to that.
Yeah, like similar size, somewhat similar skill set. And it was not like the touchdown they scored against the Bears was not even his first this year. Like they have proactively gotten him involved early in the season. And we knew that Williams wasn't going to be an every snap guy coming off a significant injury. So McLaughlin was already involved, and man, a lot of people are going to pass the eye test against the Bears who would not against other defenses. I get that. But he was absolutely excellent.
Producer Colin had a selfish waiver wire question. He thinks other people might be thinking this. I don't know. Potentially you have Geno Smith on a bye week in Superflex. Do you dare pick up Zach Wilson in the Nate Hackett revenge game against the very unserious, that's my commentary, very unserious Denver Broncos defense? The Broncos defense might legitimately be the worst defense I've ever watched.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because like Vance Joseph has been in the league for a long, long time. Sean Payton obviously has been in the league for a long time. That's one of the worst defenses I've ever watched from nobody knows what they're supposed to be doing over there.
Yeah, they not only did they give up the 70 points to Miami, they gave up a nearly flawless half of football to Justin Fields. Before Fields threw like an end of half Hail Mary, he was 16 for 16 against Denver. And the completion,
which is worse, giving up 70 points to an NFL team or a viable game to the Bears?
I know. Like the Bears were rolling, and I will say a handful of those throws were really like, oh man, what a dart. That was a great throw. He was in rhythm and all that. But a lot of them were just wide ass open. It was really, really bad. It was sort of jarringly bad. It was, for a while, that game was like watching, I don't know, it was like watching a Big 12 game. It wasn't even serious NFL football. So yeah, that is absolutely a defense that can be picked on. And we're bearing the lead here because Wilson looked awesome. Like he did have a game wrecking mistake against the Chiefs, right? He dropped the snap, but he made throws that he has not made in the NFL. Like the touch throw to the back corner of the end zone was just a throw that we have not seen from Wilson. Like we've seen him in sort of improv situations, scramble drills, like heave the ball downfield a million yards. And we've seen we've seen the arm strength, we've seen some of the traits, but we've not seen a lot of touch from him. We haven't, like, he's been, for whatever reason, like especially the first year of his career, could not throw a screen pass to save his life. Like some of the simple stuff that you got to be able to do, he's done really poorly. But all of a sudden against the Chiefs, you know, some of the internal clock issues weren't there, and the touch was there in a big way. I don't know if it's repeatable, but it's as good as I've seen him look. So I won't dismiss the idea that Zach Wilson is having a moment and a switch has flipped.
Yeah, the bar is very, very low.
Very low.
So yeah, I think.
But, oh my gosh, the way they were talking about, you know, and Mina Kimes had a great tweet about it, and I heard some other people talking about it too. Like the way they were talking about Zach Wilson when literally anything would go well was hilarious. And it should not have reached that point, but obviously it has with good reason.
Yeah, he did end up having a really nice night, but Mina perfectly compared. I saw the tweet too, and any dog owner understands it's like, you know, making excuses like for your dog, right? When like blaming yourself, like, oh yeah, you know what? We shouldn't have taken him to the dog park. That's too crazy, stressful of an environment. Like, oh yeah, he nipped me, but he didn't break skin. You know, like that was the type of stuff they were treating Zach Wilson with. But again, shout out to Zach. He had a great night. The only thing I will say here, Colin, yeah, sure, maybe you can pick up Zach Wilson and start him on the bye week. Most people, and like, shout out to your league for having some self-respect. Most superflex leagues have no self-respect. Like the moment that any vagabond quarterback gets even close to a starting job, they end up getting rostered. So shout out to your league for having some self-respect, Colin, and any other superflex league out there that doesn't necessarily act so thirsty at the quarterback position. But all right, Andy, hell of a show. That's going to do it for us. All right, on Wednesday, you people, beautiful people, Eckler's Edge is back. Austin's got plenty of stuff to talk about. Trust me, we're going to have a banger of an episode. Should be another fun one. Until then, we're out.